Welcome to Escape Velocity Space News. I am your host, Dr. Pamela Gay, and I am here to put science in your brain. Writing this week's episode was a bit of a trial. We had plans to discuss the launch of Starliner, NASA's still untested second vehicle to launch humans to space. But the launch keeps getting postponed, and as of the time of recording on May 22nd, NASA has put the mission on indefinite hold due to a helium leak. So, no Starliner feature. We were also hoping to update you on new coronal mass ejections from a new sunspot cluster containing sunspot 3688. But it is being pretty quiet. Meanwhile, just out of sight from SDO and SOHO, our old friend from last episode, sunspot 3664, is firing off massive flares we just don't have enough info on to report on. The best we have is a tweet from Dr. Ryan French about an X12 flare pointed away from us, and I have hopes for a paper someday in the future. There is so much anticipated spacey goodness that went splat. While those stories managed to avoid this news cycle, this just means other stories, rich in science, are going to get their day to shine. In this episode, we bring you stories of how JWST, not LIGO and Virgo, JWST spotted the most distant black hole merger to date, why the search for life on other worlds gets more challenging the more we look, and we take a deep dive into the things we're doing that cause and relieve climate change. All this and more is coming to you right here, right now, on EVSN, a product of CosmoQuest. This episode is made possible by our supporters on Patreon. As we head towards summer, JWST is getting ready to start its second year of science operations. During its brief period of operations, this $8.8 billion spacecraft has been working hard to prove it can do science worthy of its price tag. Adding to its list of accomplishments is ESA's May 16th announcement that JWST had discovered a pair of merging galaxies with clear evidence of imminent black hole merger. The system was found while analyzing data from the JWST Primer program, a large area survey designed for extragalactic research. The system is cataloged as ZS7, and its light is shining towards us from when the universe was just 740 million years old. On its own, it doesn't look like much, just another red smear of light shining at us from the early universe. Analysis of spectra, however, spectra which spread the light out and allow us to study composition and motion in detail, well, the spectra allowed researchers to realize there is fast-moving gas and a pair of active black holes. This work is published in the monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society by Hannah Ubler as first author. According to Ubler, quote, "We found evidence for very dense gas with fast motions in the vicinity of the black hole, as well as hot and highly ionized gas illuminated by the energetic radiation typically produced by black holes in their accretion episodes. JWST also allowed our team to spatially separate the two black holes." End quote. One black hole is measured to have a mass 50 million times the mass of the Sun. The other is estimated to be the same size, but is harder to measure due to obscuring gas. Ubler explains, quote, "Our findings suggest that merging is an important route through which black holes can rapidly grow," end quote. And with massive black holes come massive galaxies. With these images, we are watching the systems of today forming 13 billion years ago. While this isn't the first time imminent black hole mergers have been found through images, this technique certainly is less common than spotting in-action mergers through their gravitational waves. Stellar mass black holes and intermediate mass black holes in some situations can all be detected with the LIGO and Virgo and other gravitational wave detectors that are built here on Earth. This particular merger, however, won't be detectable with these systems. It will just rumble gravitationally at the wrong frequency. It may be detectable with systems like the planned LISA mission to detect gravitational waves using spacecraft. I say systems like because this system won't merge anytime in the next many generations of human lifetimes. But LISA will be able to detect systems like this one and help us understand just how common these amazing mergers may be. The sky is littered with small fuzzy blobs that are chock full of science waiting to be understood. And one such fuzzy blob looks surreally like a butterfly. Discovered in 2016, this object is cataloged as IRAS 23077 plus 6707, and it's located about 1,000 light years from Earth. Exactly what its fluttery light might be hiding couldn't be discerned with the discovery data from Pan-STARRS, but new data from the submillimeter array in Hawaii has led to cool discoveries. In a paper led by Kaiperi Brukia in the astrophysical journal Letters, researchers announced the discovery of a very young star at this system's core, a star about 2 to 4 times the mass of our Sun. In a second paper, also in astrophysical journal Letters, researchers led by Christiana Monch identify a massive planet-forming disk around the star. It is this disk that is creating the dark band through the bright nebula. They estimate the disk is capable of supporting numerous gas giants on orbits as much as 300 times further out than Jupiter is from our Sun. It is unknown just how many lone systems like this one are out there between the easily visible stars, waiting to be seen. This particular system stands out because we see a smear of light with a dark band across it. This is the classic shape of a young star still surrounded by bright gas and an edge-on planet-forming disk blocking a band of the light. The image we use as our background here at EVSN is a similar kind of system. To piece together the formation and diversity of extrasolar planets, we'll want to find and study more smudges like this one. Here's to hoping they are all this beautiful in their own kinds of ways. One of the things I personally enjoy most about working in astronomy is the way yesterday's empty star fields and faint smudges resolve into spectacular vistas and amazing nebulae as we build better telescopes and find the time to point them at interesting things. That latter point, finding the time, is actually the one I think startles people the most. The Hubble Space Telescope launched in 1991 and has had corrective lenses since 1993. This means we have more than 30 years of stunning images, all from Hubble, and yet Hubble is still finding stunning new things to resolve into new science. On May 15th, NASA and ESA released a stunning image of 3 young stars clearing out gas and dust around them. The brightest of this trio is HP Tauri, a well-known variable star. It is likely around 10 million years old and will one day grow up to be a star a lot like our own 4.6 billion-year-old Sun. This system is just 550 light years away, and its constantly varying brightness can be measured with an off-the-shelf CCD and a moderately sized backyard telescope. Just be prepared to only see a fuzzy blob that changes in brightness. Up next, we turn from the depths of space to reflect on our own planet Earth. Stay tuned. We are recording this episode about a week in advance of our normal recording date. This is because our producer, Pelphrey, and I will be at the Balticon Science Fiction and Fantasy Convention over Memorial Day weekend. And I'm then flying to Orlando, where I'll be meeting with a colleague, spending a day at Disney, and helping a friend move. This kind of travel is a bit selfish. I get to hug old friends, take a selfie with the Gay Street sign in Baltimore, and do things that can only be done face-to-face, like lifting heavy boxes to load a van. I'm going to do this because I want to. But in general, academia requires me to travel if I want to maintain my career. The 3 years of the pandemic demonstrated that without a shadow of a doubt, real-world conferences and events are necessary for healthy collaboration and for inspiring new directions of research. They can't be replaced with virtual events. The networking just isn't the same, and the doors opened are fewer, if there at all. And who among us has succeeded at virtually attending a meeting in Japan while living at home a dozen time zones away? When researchers who care about our climate see this kind of a problem, they start doing research. In a new paper of the Journal of the Association for Sciences of Limnology and Oceanography, researchers led by Marie Elodie Perga review the carbon footprint of researchers attending conferences between 2004 and 2023. Based on the distribution of conference venues and information on where attendees are based, they determined that a typical conference attendee produces 1.3 tons of carbon dioxide while traveling to and attending each conference. As a point of comparison, the Paris Agreement has as a stated goal 2.3 tons of carbon emission per year per person by 2030 and 1.4 tons by 2040. This means that attending just one conference a year will create more than half a year's worth of emissions. When a major theme of so many conferences has become climate and its impacts on everything from weather to oceans to farming to manufacturing, it becomes clear that our current way of communicating to one another and advancing our careers needs to become our old ways. Many conferences suggest going vegan or using electric vehicles as possible ways to make conference attending more green. And before you all at me about that possibility, their research finds that what we eat and how we drive are only minor factors when compared to the associated damage done by air travel. And with so many conferences held in places like Hawaii and so many conferences requiring jumping from one continent to another, rail travel isn't exactly a reasonable alternative. But there could be another way. The pandemic taught us that humans are terrible at mingling in virtual spaces and even more terrible at fully engaging in virtual events. We know from the research that conferences that require 1,000 people from around the world to converge on one spot is terrible for the environment. But what if instead there were simultaneous satellite events such that people in different regions gathered for the same event at the same time, with the understanding that keynotes would be beamed between locations and parallel sessions would have real-world speakers scattered from place to place? The logistics for this kind of meeting is suddenly super complex. But that's something we know how to do. Now, we have shortened travel distances for everyone, real-world interactions for everyone, and the chance to have a shared semi-virtual, semi-IRL meeting of a globe-spanning population of researchers. I attended one conference like this in the days before the pandemic. It was hosted by the American Humanist Society and was split across many university campuses to allow more people to participate with a lowered carbon footprint. This isn't a new idea. It is just one that requires our professional societies to rethink their business models. And if it comes down to climate or the economy, I know which side I'm on. Like many, I love to travel though. And I keep hoping that changes to industry and power production advances will make my occasional desire to visit Mickey and watch a rocket launch become guilt-free escapes. But change sometimes gets slowed by unexpected factors. When it comes to switching to power generation that comes from more renewable energy sources and expanding the use of electric cars, the slowdown comes from the availability of copper. A new study by the International Energy Forum points out that current mining rates and recycling rates can't produce copper in the needed amounts, and this isn't a tiny problem. According to the report, quote, as many as 6 new large copper mines must be brought online annually over the next several decades. About 40% of the production from new mines will be required for electric vehicle-related grid updates, end quote. Starting up new mines isn't straightforward. There is typically a 20-year lag between discovery of a copper deposit and the permits being issued to build a mine. And presumably, all the easy-to-find deposits have already been found. Even without the added needs of new green economies, our access to copper will limit the global economy as more of the world becomes developed. According to a summary of this work from the University of Michigan, quote, the researchers found that between 2018 and 2050, the world will need to mine 115% more copper than has been mined in all of human history up until 2018, just to meet business as usual needs. If a green economy isn't in our future, it becomes necessary to ask, can we just pull the carbon dioxide we emit back out of the atmosphere somehow? A new study conducted in Germany considered a variety of methods, including direct air carbon capture and storage and bioenergy with carbon capture and storage, as well as measures to increase carbon uptake by ecosystems. The study considered how hard it would be to implement different mechanisms and what could be accomplished. They found that in Germany, it would be possible to offset only 5 to 15% of current emissions. According to researcher Daniela Thron, quote, with technological carbon dioxide removal measures, the economic and institutional hurdles in particular are still quite high, end quote. Put another way, to make big carbon dioxide removals, you have to spend a lot of money and disrupt the normal way of doing things. The study suggests that meaningful change may need to come through myriad small, local efforts designed to meet the needs and fit within the infrastructure of the regions where they are implemented. In nations where there is a unified view that climate measures need to be taken, this may be possible. But I do worry about places like the US, where many communities will opt to ignore climate change rather than help to save our planet. It may seem that everything is doom and gloom when it comes to meeting the requirements of the Paris Climate Agreement and slowing the pace of climate change. I can't say it isn't bleak. What I can say is some amazingly creative things are getting tried as folks strive to find a new path forward. One of the latest new technologies are thermal traps made of quartz that leverage sunlight to heat materials to over 1,000 degrees Celsius. Developed by ETH Zurich, the new technology could allow some industries to become carbon neutral by eliminating the need to combust fossil fuels to achieve needed manufacturing conditions. This work is led by Emiliano Casiti, who has gotten it to work at laboratory scales with units measuring 7.5 by 30 centimeters. And the new unit has significantly less heat loss than existing industrial solar plants built on different technologies. The next step is going to be to see if this lab unit can be scaled up to even a factory R&D unit size. But every idea has to start somewhere. And this technique shows promise. And it isn't alone. Half a world away at Australia's RMIT, researchers have been looking for ways to utilize the billion tons of coal ash produced in coal-fired power plants in a year. It is estimated that in Australia, coal ash accounts for a fifth of all waste. At the same time, they've been trying to figure out how to combat the 8% of all global carbon emissions that come from cement production. And somehow, it looks like both the overabundance of coal ash and the carbon emissions from cement can be fixed, at least in part, by making concrete out of coal ash. They found that the coal ash concrete required half the cement as other mixes and was just as strong. This means that coal ash can go into making concrete that releases half the emissions. It's a small thing. But if we can somehow halve the amount of cement emissions globally, 4% of current emissions will go away. We are a long way from seeing any of these technologies going into production. But seeing them get tested and paid attention to at government levels gives me some small hope that we can maybe slow climate change enough to allow all of us to have the occasional airplane to somewhere that brings us joy. Up next, we're going to be joined by Erik Madaus for Tales from the Launchpad. Stay tuned. Next up, I'm pleased to welcome on aerospace correspondent Erik Madaus for this week's Tales from the Launchpad. Hey, Erik.
Hi, Pamela. On May 12th, China launched the Xi'an-23 satellite from the Qiuquan spaceport on Long March 4C. Let's watch the launch. The launch was successful. Xi'an-23 is a space environment monitoring satellite, according to Chinese media. On May 16th, Russia launched the Cosmos 2576 satellite on a Soyuz 2.1B rocket. The launch was conducted from the Plesetsk Cosmodrome in northern Russia. Let's watch the launch. According to the U.S. military, Cosmos 2576 is a, quote, counter-space weapon capable of interfering with other satellites. It was launched into the same orbit as the U.S. satellite, USA 314, aka Edirol 82, a KH-11 spy satellite, launched in 2021. Previous Russian satellites have been launched into similar orbits of classified U.S. satellites for close observation, notably Cosmos 2558 in 2022. It observed USA 326 a few months after the latter's launch. The mission also carried 2 other military satellites and several commercial satellites. On May 20th, China launched the 4 Beijing 3C satellites into sun-synchronous orbit on Long March 2D. Launch took place from the Haiyuan spaceport. Let's watch the launch. The satellites have a design resolution of a half meter per pixel at their 500-kilometer orbit. Also on May 20th, a Kuizhou 11 carried 4 satellites into orbit from the Qiuquan spaceport. Let's watch the launch. The primary passenger was Wuhan 1, a commercial meteorology satellite. The other 3 satellites included other commercial satellites and a, quote, ultra-low orbit demonstration satellite. On May 22nd, SpaceX launched the NROL-146 mission from Vandenberg Space Force Base. Let's watch the launch.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Vehicle is pitching downrange. Engine chamber pressure is nominal.
NROL-146 carried the first batch of NRO's, quote, proliferated architecture satellites. SpaceX involvement in this is named Starshield, which is a SpaceX program to provision specially made Starlink satellites for government missions. The booster, 1071, completed its 16th landing about 10 minutes after launch. As is customary for NRO launches, coverage did not show the second stage, camera, and the live stream ended after first stage landing. There were also 6 Starlink launches in the last 2 weeks. We're paying special attention to another mission that occurred, Blue Origin's NS-25 mission. NS-25 was Blue Origin's first crewed New Shepard flight since August 2022. NS-23 in September 2022 unfortunately suffered a first stage engine failure. The capsule, which was not carrying human passengers, automatically boarded off the top of the failing booster and landed safely under parachute a few minutes later. NS-24 would not be until December 2023. It was another uncrewed flight carrying only research payloads and demonstrated the fixes Blue Origin applied to the booster to prevent another first stage failure. It was successful, allowing for a resumption of crewed flights. NS-25 featured 6 passengers, the usual complement of business people and people with lesser-known contributions to spaceflight. Ed Dwight is an African-American who was a U.S. Air Force test pilot in the 1960s. He worked through the first phase of the program to transfer to NASA and become an astronaut in 1961, but was ultimately not selected. The head of the test pilot school, Chuck Yeager, initially refused to admit Mr. Dwight at all before President John F. Kennedy personally intervened. After Kennedy's assassination in 1963, there was no realistic chance for him to become an astronaut because of the racial climate at the time. He resigned from the U.S. Air Force in 1966. NASA would not fly a black astronaut until 1983, Gillian Bluford on STS-8. To date, only 21 African Americans have flown into space, 2 as space tourists. After his military service, he became an accomplished sculptor, going to create many sculptures depicting Black life and history. NS-25 launched successfully on May 19th, delivering its crew the standard 107-kilometer apogee over a flight time of about 10 minutes. The rest of the crew included Gopi Thotakura, the second Indian citizen to fly into space. He's a healthcare entrepreneur and pilot. Mason Angel, an American venture capitalist. Sylvain Chiron, a French businessman. Kenneth Hess, an American entrepreneur. And American adventurer Carol Schaller. Capsule touchdown and the booster landing were both successful.
Thanks, Erik. Before we go, I have one delightfully weird tech story related to future lunar exploration. Research has shown that astronauts working on the moon are most likely to fall over when using tools. And once they fall over, getting up while wearing a spacesuit that restricts their motion is less than easy and is always a bit exhausting. Since future astronauts are going to be tasked with building humanity a home on the moon, or at least a research station on the moon, researchers are trying to figure out how to help astronauts right themselves when they find themselves flat on their face in the lunar regolith. A team of engineers at MIT have developed a new robotic arm that will fit into astronauts' backpacks and onto their spacesuits. These super limbs, as they're calling them, will provide a push in the right direction to give astronauts the extra hand up they might one day need. And that's it for now. Good night, everyone, and remember to go out and look up. Oh, and please give this video a like and subscribe so the algorithm tells you and the world when new science is ready to be learned. Thank you.